Great.
So go ahead.
Thanks, everyone, and welcome to Moz's Lobby Day Webinar 2017. As I have told you, we are recording this webinar, so for the purposes of sound quality, if you guys could mute yourselves, that would be really great. And then if you have any questions that you want to have us answer, just put them, you can either unmute yourself at the end of the webinar or you can put them in the chat box as we go along. So just to give you a sense of what we're going to be covering today, Lobby Day, as you know, is coming up in just 2 days on Friday, February 10th. We are going to have Kristen Eflin talking about why Lobby Day is so important. Then we're going to have our amazing lobbyist, Amber Ulvanis, home birth mother of 3, talking to us about giving us kind of a primer on lobbying. Then Heather Carey, who is the director of the Center for Health Policy Leadership at Bastyr University, who's going to talk to us about the art of the elevator speech. And then I'll give you kind of in a nutshell what Moz's 2017 legislative agenda is going to look like. And finally, I'll be filling in for Sasha Henry, talking about the logistics of Lobby Day. Sasha is our amazing legislative liaison. Those of you who have been to Lobby Day in the past have seen how she basically makes Lobby Day function like a well-oiled machine. And you will meet her on Lobby Day, but I'll just go through some of the logistical details toward the end of the webinar, and then we'll have time for questions. So, Kristen, you're on. You got to unmute yourself.
We were searching for it. Hello, my name is Kristen Eflin. I'm a licensed and certified professional midwife across the Cascade Mountains in Central Washington. I'm on the Moz Legislative and Health Policy Committee, and I'm excited to spend a few minutes with you here today as we prepare for Moz Lobby Day this Friday in Olympia. Today, I'd like to start us off with the great toddler question, why? Why do midwives in Washington travel, and families as well, and students, and apprentices, travel to Olympia to spend the day there educating our elected officials once a year? Next slide, please. Why should we care? I'd love to share the answer with you because it's what I love about lobbying, interacting with the members who represent the legislative branch of our democracy. This work is filled with potential and opportunity. For those of you who are here, who are midwives or aspiring midwives, I would venture to bet that most of us wanted to enter the profession of midwifery for more than one reason. We wanted to be midwives, but I believe that most of us also want to affect change, to change the culture of pregnancy and childbirth for all pregnant persons and their families, who we also hope will come participate in Lobby Day. This is no small charge, but your annual participation in Lobby Day, whether you're a midwife, a consumer, a family member, a student, or an apprentice, can help bring about the change you wish to see, especially on a policy level. Changes to our profession, including increased access to the profession, which also includes the affordability and sustainability of practicing here in Washington, and changes to the wider culture. Perhaps you can tell after spending just a few minutes with me that I'm an optimist. In reality, we know that change is often more slow and incremental than we want it to be. But when you look over time and see what we have been able to accomplish historically, you can begin to see the cumulative effect of our ability to influence policy. Don't underestimate the potential of your annual participation and engagement. Next slide, please. What has lobbying done for me? Now that we have an answer to our toddler question, why, we can move on to the type of question we might get from our teenagers. What has lobbying done for me? Even if you have never participated in Lobby Day or never contacted your representatives to advocate on your own behalf or on the behalf of parents, babies, and families, Moz has been working for you, organizing a midwife Lobby Day in the state capitol for decades. And even before Moz officially existed, midwives, consumers, and student midwives worked on our behalf, educating legislators and effecting policy changes from which we and our clients still benefit today. Much of what you think about as the defining characteristics of practicing licensed midwifery in Washington was won through advocacy. The work accomplished by those that have gone before us has been awesome, but there is more to be done. Next slide, please. There is much more potential for us to actualize. To reach this potential, we need your participation and that of your colleagues. We hope that more of us can make it to Olympia in person each year. And for those who can't make it, we hope you will contact your representatives on your own time. This slide lists some examples of the potential influence we could have. I am passionate about getting more midwives, families, and aspiring midwives to Lobby Day each year. I have always imagined that one reason we have had such low participation some years by practicing midwives might be due to a lack of information. This webinar was designed to help you feel more prepared and informed, and to help you see why your participation is vital. We have organized this webinar today to help you feel ready to come to Lobby Day and join a team as we approach our lawmakers with the goal of effecting positive policy changes for our profession and the families we serve. Next slide, please. It is important to realize that it is more enjoyable for your legislators to meet with you and get to know you, their constituents, the people whom they came to Olympia to represent and serve, than to always meet with professional lobbyists whom they see every day and whom they know are hired to represent various interests. While the role of professional lobbying is also critical to our legislative successes, you as a constituent have a special and unique role to play. Next slide, please. While you may not know a lot about lobbying, you do know a lot about midwifery. You are the expert in the room when it comes to midwifery and how the midwifery model of care affects parents, babies, and families. You are there to make our issues personal and help your legislators see your concerns and hopes through your eyes. We are going to go over some facts and figures and details of our legislative agenda here today, but you don't need to memorize everything. Your role at Lobby Day is to be yourself and convey your personal message as it relates to our legislative agenda. Don't worry if you can't remember all the details or can't answer a question. That is what we hire our awesome lobbyist, Amber, for, and she can always be back in touch with anyone you meet who needs more information. Next slide, please. Stay tuned for lots more tips and information. Rest assured, you do not have to visit your representatives on your own. We travel to visit them in teams. But I will conclude nonetheless with a slide containing some ideas for things you can say when meeting with a legislator when you don't know what else to say or do. And now I would like to introduce our lobbyist, Amber Albanese. She has been doing great work for Moz for several years now, following the birth of her second child with her midwife, Audrey.
Thanks, Kristen. Next slide. So I am here on this webinar to give you some tips about what I think makes up especially effective lobbying. So I'm starting out with the ABCs of lobbying. So A, for accurate. I think it behooves you to think ahead of time about the story that you want to convey to your member. That is the most powerful part and the most effective part about being a constituent lobbyist, is making a connection with them on a personal level and that relates to your shared community. As Kristen said, if you get a question from them, answer to the best of your ability. It's completely fine anytime you don't have an answer to say, I'll get back to you with that, or our lobbyist can get back to you with an answer, and you can take a whole bunch of my business cards with you if you like. Secondly, be brief. These appointments are short. I would say be prepared for a total of about 10 minutes with members. So if you think about dividing that message or that time among your group, you want to have a pretty concise message that you can explain to them and move on rapidly. And then be courteous. the C, be sure to thank that member for his or her time and attention. The legislators are public servants, and we're grateful to them for going to Olympia and doing this work for us. Next slide, please. So actually going into a legislator office visits, this need not be intimidating. People often think that they are, but just remember that that legislator is there to serve you. So my tips would be to thank the legislator for their time when you step into the office, introduce each person by name and where they've traveled from. Tell the member why you are there to see them, and illustrate the problem or solution by using a bullet point from the fact sheet. So this would be, the why of, this is your personal story, this why you're motivated to be there in the first place. And by illustrate the problem is, we have this particular issue, and we have worked to come up with a solution. And now we're going to request that you, legislator, support our legislative priorities. So you'll be asking them, will you support us on this particular issue? And make a note of it so we can keep track of that information. It's also I think it's essential to always leave a little bit of space for the member to talk. It's, we tend to fill up the space and hurry because we don't have all that much time. But it is important to hear what they have to say too. So if you could ask them if they have any questions or comments for you, it's often an opportunity to find out something pretty interesting. Take notes about that member. The groups overall will see a lot of members on lobby day. And it actually, you might think, oh, I'll remember that. But as you go to meeting after meeting, you realize that having a note about it will help you tremendously, because you'll ask, who was that said that? And then, okay, so thank them again on your way out. Next slide. Okay, so some additional tips overall, not necessarily pertaining to just the in-office meeting. Do some research on your legislators ahead of time. If you know who you're going to see that day, it's terrific to know, do they have a connection to healthcare somehow that causes them to be better informed or potentially have some bias. It's helpful to do that. And I think the easiest way to do is that every member has a short bio on the website if you have a chance to review that. Be kind to the legislative assistants. They're the gatekeeper to the office. So, they have the power to allow you to see the member, to really try to get you to them or not, and they pass information on that they feel like is most important. So one thing that I have learned as a lobbyist, that developing those relationships are very important as well. Tell your own story. We've touched on this one a couple of times. Be a good listener and respond to their questions and concerns. Oh, and this one, be ready to steer a conversation back to your message. Legislators often get off track when you're talking to them. They either are misunderstanding what you're asking for, or they start telling a random story about, their veterinarian who delivered their last cow, or who knows what it's going to be. But it's good to be able to acknowledge their story and say, great, well, why I'm here to see you today is because of this, to steer them back to what you want to talk about. And return to your message points. You will have those there in front of you, and they're to be used for your disposal. And so most importantly, remember to be patient and flexible when you lobby. It's so crazy on the Hill right now. Like today, there's major labor groups and so many lobby days happening, and it's crowded and chaotic. So, just be ready for it to be a little bit nuts and to have meetings moved day of, or shift who you're going to meet with if it's maybe a staff person instead of a member, or move to meeting a member in the hallway outside of another meeting instead of in their office. Those things happen regularly. And so if you just have an open mind and some patience about how things are going to go, you'll have a successful day. Next slide. So now I'm going to hand it off to Heather, who's going to talk more about shaping your message.
Thank you, Amber. Hello, my name is Heather Carey. I am the director of Bastyr University's Center for Health Policy Leadership, a supporter of midwifery, and a grateful client of midwifery care about 30 years ago. I am with you today to talk about the elevator speech and how to deliver the perfect pitch. Why is this important? Because developing your personal pitch will prepare you for more effective communication with the legislators and their staff that we will be visiting with on Lobby Day. Next slide, please. So what is the elevator speech? This is your short, prepared, personalized pitch that conveys your message clearly and concisely. It's called an elevator speech with the idea that we create a pitch that can be delivered within a quick elevator ride, selling your idea, service, or product in that short window of opportunity. Next slide, please. Why do I need a prepared pitch? Developing our pitch prepares us for advocating for what we believe in and support. This is especially important when visiting busy policymakers who are being approached daily with requests. You want your request to be compelling and clearly understandable. Next slide, please. To create an elevator pitch, first identify your objective, what you hope to accomplish with your message. Explain briefly what you do and why it is important. Convey your uniqueness and engage your audience. Next slide, please. Most importantly, connect to your why you do the work or support the work of those who do, why you believe the work is important for the community, essential for health creation, and positively contributing to our healthcare system. Next slide, please. This is a template you can use to get started in developing your elevator speech. And this webinar will be available in the slides, so don't feel like you have to jot this down right now. Next slide, please. This is an example. Hello, my name is Heather Carey. I am here today to wholeheartedly support the midwifery profession. As a health policy professional and beneficiary of midwifery care, I believe strongly in this valuable healthcare. Midwives positively contribute to the health of individuals and our communities by lovingly and skillfully bringing humans into the world. Next slide, please. So thank you for the work you all are doing, and I look forward to seeing you in Olympia on Friday. And now back to Audrey.
Thanks, Heather. So I didn't even introduce myself at the beginning, so I apologize for that. I'm Audrey Levine. I am the MAWS Legislative and Health Policy Committee Chair, and I've been in that role since about 2002. And I think that I often joke that that's because I live 2 blocks from the Capitol building, but Amber actually lives even closer than that, which is one of the many reasons we love having her as our lobbyist. So this is what our legislative agenda for 2017 looks like, and you will be walking around on Lobby Day with a copy of this legislative agenda. In addition to that, you will have talking points that we'll be handing out in the morning at our briefing. So I'm just going to kind of highlight the main points of our legislative agenda. So these are our goals. First and foremost is to educate legislators about the health benefits and the cost effectiveness of licensed midwifery care. And many of the members who we're going to be meeting with are already very familiar with midwifery, and you will hear that from them. It's often surprising to me how much they remember from year to year about our particular issues. And it's gratifying because in Washington State, we really have great support from legislators. Another goal is to express our gratitude for passage of House Bill 1773 and to talk a little bit about the impact that House Bill 1773 has had on our profession. I can talk about that a little bit more in a couple of slides, but just to know that in 2014, we were able to get legislation passed that not only built a bridge between the requirements of the National Credential for Midwives, the CPM, but to build a bridge between that and the requirements for licensure in Washington State. And the impact of this, among other things, was that it grew the profession of midwifery dramatically in Washington State. We went from having 120 midwives in the state in the past 2 years to having 174 licensed midwives in the state. So that's over a 40% increase in the past couple of years. The other thing that House Bill 1773 did was it established mandatory peer review, continuing education, and data collection in Washington State. So we are now, all licensed midwives are now required to do data collection as part of quality improvement efforts. And then our two specific requests for support are one for a budget proviso to maintain the cap on the midwifery licensing fee, which would be a carryover from the previous biennium. As many of you, if not all of you know, we have been able for the past since 2008, so 8 years, going on 9 years now, to maintain the midwifery licensing fee at $525 a year because we have a very powerful report, Department of Health report, cost-benefit analysis that I'll talk about a little bit more in a minute, that shows that licensed midwives save the state nearly $500,000 every 2 years. So without this cap on the midwifery licensing fee, we would be paying more like $1,500 a year. So that budget proviso is one specific request, and another specific request that's really significant this year is for a budget proviso that would increase the Medicaid reimbursement rate for birth centers according to the Healthcare Authority's recommendation. So this past couple of years, Ma's leadership has worked really diligently, and I know Val is on this call, so former president of Ma's, was very intimately involved in these conversations with the Healthcare Authority to get them to review their methodology for setting the Medicaid reimbursement rate for birth centers. And this culminated in a report that was sent to the legislature in October recommending that the facility fee go from under $600 currently for Medicaid facility fee reimbursement rate up to $1,742, so almost tripling the rate. One of the other really exciting things about the report is that it estimated that in order for this budget proviso to have a budget neutral effect, that only 22 additional families per year would need to choose to have their baby at a birth center instead of a hospital in order for the increase in the facility fee to be basically zeroed out in the budget. We have two other additional requests, and these, these are important bills that Moz has lent their support to, and we've testified on. But I want to be clear that, as Amber said, we have a limited amount of time in our visits, and so we really want to focus on the two budget provisos. But if you have time to also talk briefly about the Healthy Starts Act. So there's both a Senate bill and a House bill. Those of you who were in Olympia last year may have remembered that we were lobbying on this bill as well. They would require employers to provide basic accommodations to pregnant workers. So things like bathroom breaks and increased flexibility in order to get prenatal care. What they've done this year is they've expanded what the bill would do, and that now it would also require hospitals to institute things like baby-friendly practices that we as midwives know are so important, things like skin-to-skin contact immediately after birth. So that's the Healthy Starts Act. The other bills that we are supporting are Senate Bill 5032 and House Bill 1116. These two bills would establish paid family and medical leave so that workers can care for a new baby or an ailing family member, or care for themselves without having to suffer economic hardship from taking time off of work. So, the key takeaways, one of the key talking points is that the data consistently demonstrates that for those with low-risk pregnancies, planned community-based births, and that is a phrase that we are increasingly trying to use instead of talking about out-of-hospital birth and defining what we do in relation to hospitals as if the hospital is the norm. We're talking about planned community-based births at home and in freestanding birth centers, and that these births result in lower C-section rates and higher breastfeeding rates, both of which contribute to better long-term health for families. This is information that I alluded to earlier about the 2007 Department of Health cost benefit analysis. This was really an extraordinary study that came out. It was commissioned by the Washington State Legislature, and it was actually in response to our request for a licensing fee cap. And basically what happened was the legislature commissioned the Department of Health to do an analysis to see whether it was worth it to the state to continue to subsidize the midwifery program. And what the report showed was that, as I said earlier, licensed midwifery care confers savings to Washington State Medicaid of nearly $500,000 biennially. And if you include the entire healthcare system, it's like $2.7 million. One of the other fascinating things to note about that is what a conservative estimate it was, that it really only took into account avoided C-sections. It didn't take into account the facility fees of costly interventions like epidurals and IVs and fetal monitoring. So this was just looking at avoided C-sections by having your baby with a licensed midwife in a birth center or at home. So thanks to Elizabeth Nethery, we have some extraordinary handouts to bring around with us to legislators on Lobby Day. This first one, the first three really look at the picture in birth centers across Washington State. And then we have some that I'm not going to show you today, but we have gathered data about individual birth centers and the percentage of Medicaid clients that they serve and how their birth center population has grown over the years. So remember I said that in the Healthcare Authority report, they estimated that only 22 additional families per year would need, who are on Medicaid, would need to choose a birth center birth over a hospital birth in order to make this budget proviso budget neutral. Well, if you look at this graph, you can see that between 2010 and 2015, there was an average of 41 additional Medicaid births per year. So this is almost double the 22 per year that they're saying we would need in order to make the budget proviso pencil out. Here's another really great visual to show how birth center births have grown. over the period from 1990 to 2015. And then this is also, I think, a really important visual because, and we've all known that the birth centers are kind of concentrated across, sort of in the I-5 corridor, but this graphic really shows the potential for birth centers in other parts of the state, particularly in rural parts of the state where there are much higher percentages of folks who are on Medicaid and could really benefit from licensed midwifery care. So, as it says on this slide, as rates of Medicaid use are highest in rural parts of the state, this will also lead to cost savings if birth centers expand in those areas. And so hopefully we will have some wonderful families with us on Lobby Day. We usually do, and it's awesome. It's particularly compelling for members when they hear from constituents who have been the beneficiaries of midwifery care, as opposed to just hearing from those of us who are going to benefit from, the budget provisos. And of course, having adorable babies there is, well, how can you say no to adorable babies, right? This is a picture from Lobby Day in 2014 when we were working on passage of House Bill 1773. We do try and get a picture, when we have kind of a critical mass of people. Some people come late to Lobby Day, other people leave early, so we try and schedule a time during the day when we can take a picture of everybody on the steps in the Ledge building. And so that's it for my slides, although, as I said, I'm going to be talking a little bit for Sasha about logistics of Lobby Day. This is my contact information. Please feel free to get a hold of me if you have questions. And we're certainly really looking forward to seeing folks on Friday. So, directions to the Capitol, it's pretty easy. If you're coming on I-5, it's exit 105 from either direction. It is a little bit challenging to park around the area where we are meeting for our briefing. So Amber typically, and we're so grateful, opens up her house to us for our morning briefing. So there will be bagels and coffee and tea, and somebody said donuts, so there will probably be donuts as well. And that's Amber's address up there, 1610 Water Street Southwest. So as it says on this slide, it is difficult to park in this particular area. The limited parking is 2 hours, and it's very strictly enforced. So it really makes sense to look at these slides, and you can see other areas where you can park either at metered places or in lots. We really encourage you to try and arrive on time. The briefing, we gather at 8 o'clock. We start the briefing by 8:15 because our appointments with members typically start at 9. So even though it's a very short walk to get there, we don't want to be late for our appointment. So if you can get there by 8 o'clock, that would be ideal. And do wear your good walking shoes because you're going to be spending a lot of time hoofing it around buildings with marble floors, so and going up and down stairs. So be comfortable, but dress nicely. So this is a slide that shows you about the different available places to park. As I mentioned, there's also on-street parking at meters. You may have some time during the day to explore Olympia a little bit, depending on, typically each team has somewhere between 5 and 8 appointments during the day. Most teams are done by between 3 and 4 o'clock. You will have anywhere from 3/4 of an hour to an hour and a half for lunch. And Amber arranges for her friends who own Old School Pizza to provide pizza for us at lunchtime. So $5 for 2 slices of pizza. There are other options nearby if you're gluten-free. Although I think we may have even had gluten-free pizza last year, which is kind of amazing. So there is a restaurant map that you can link to. And then also, between 4 and 6 p.m., the midwives who own the birth house in Olympia, Constance Fry and Carolee Hall, have offered to host a wine and cheese reception at the birth house. And we are also hoping to get some press there to talk with birth center owners and with midwives about our issues. So questions. I can't see whether people have put questions in the chat box. I can stop my screen sharing now and go back and see. So it looks like there are some questions. No, not yet. Just lovely comments. So does anybody have questions that they want to ask us?
This is Amber. I don't have a question, but I just wanted to comment that I've talked to Sasha about rather than just pizza for $5, having a pizza and salad for $8. So I think that that's probably what we're going to do.
Okay.
So just if people can bring some ones, that will be great. I can imagine that with, for $8, we might get a lot of 10s. So we'll try to get change.
Great. Okay. Anybody else have questions? Just remember to unmute yourself before you ask. Val, is there anything that you want to add about the budget proviso around birth centers?
I don't think I have. I don't have very much voice.
You don't.
So what I want to add is come prepared to talk because I won't be talking as much as you're used to. I'm super curious if we can add the that letter that from the health department with the rate for that, the birth center rate from 1999. You know that letter?
Yes.
That,
yes.
Is that in the packet? Or should I bring some?
It's not in the legislative e-packet, and we could certainly add it to that, Val. So, I failed to mention that too. So all of the items, we used to walk around with actual packets of material to give to legislators, and in the interest of conserving trees, we have gone in the past few years to doing a legislative e-packet, and there's a link to it on the MOZ website, so www.washingtonmidwives.org. So you can see what's in the legislative e-packet. And Val, if you would like to have that added, you can just, I can just make a note of it and ask Amelia to put that there.
Yeah, I would love that.
Would you send it to me again?
I know it's on Basecamp.
Okay.
And I don't have access to Basecamp anymore.
Okay.
So if you can't find it, let me know, or I'll just figure out how to get a copy. But the thing that's so useful about that is the twofold issue where, I have a piece of documentation with my name on it and the date of July 1999, which is when I first started practicing at the birth center, that gives a rate of reimbursement for mom and baby that is $100 more than is paid now.
Yeah.
And that's almost 18 years.
Right.
So it both indicates, the inadequacy of reimbursement and the inadequacy of there being any appropriate review process. And so really what this budget proviso, the language from the HCA, is both that we have a better reimbursement and that also our review is linked to the review of hospitals so that there's a regular review and that we don't go for 18 years without anyone remembering to review our process or having any recollection of how we arrived at this number.
Well, what it also does is it speaks to how much money we have saved over this many years, right? It gives a time frame in which, because one of the things that we did when we were pulling together our materials, we realized that if we bring the rate up to $1,742, that's only going to be a couple of hundred less than the average hospital facility fee is reimbursed. So, which is fascinating, right? It's 90% of what hospitals, the average hospital reimbursement is. And so we were concerned that if we said that members would be like, well, then you're not going to be saving us that much money, right? I mean, if we point that out, but really over the years, over this, 18-year period, the amount of money that the state has saved as a result of the birth center facility fee being so low is worth noting.
Yeah. And in addition, there was some statement about the HCA taking responsibility for marketing birth centers. And, that really a clear understanding was demonstrated in the report that, creating access to information about birth centers to clients on AppleCare will matter, because the real savings is in volume.
Mm-hmm.
So that's all. I'm excited to come. I'm hoping to be feeling a little more robust, but I know that, it's fun. I mean, it's exhausting and I dread it, and I always have a wonderful time. So that's all great. This has been terrific. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you, Val.
Yep.
Anybody else have any questions or comments that they would like to add? I see that Neva is on. Neva, who is our current Moz president. Neva, you want to say a hello?
Woohoo!
Hi, Val. I'm so excited to hear and see everybody who's on, and I think that we'll have lots of people watch this webinar from YouTube. I know a lot of people are in clinic today, so I myself was a little late for that. So I'm excited to see everybody on Friday and get to work and just continue on. I really feel like Val's done all the work. I mean, everyone's done all the work to get to this budget proviso, and so I'm glad that we just get to carry the ball across the finish line. So
great. It'll be good to see you, Neva. So I just saw that Richie has posted something about being a first-timer for Lobby Day and is confused about parking and timeline. The slides will be posted, Richie. So
and they already are as well. As long as they weren't changed, Audrey, very significantly, they are the ones from last year are on the Moz website already.
Okay, but we are there. This whole webinar is going to be posted.
Yes, as well. But those slides are also separately available on the Moz website.
Okay. Thanks, Kristen. Anybody else?
Audrey, I do have one more thing I want to say, and that is that although Lobby Day is hugely, deliciously, vitally important, so is being in touch with your legislators just and representatives just in general. So, even if you can't make it for any reason, craft your message. It's easy to send one email to all of your representatives, and you can certainly have your clients do that as well, or your family members. Showing up isn't the only way to participate.
Thank you, Val. That's a super important message. And so we're really hoping, I mean, as Kristen was saying earlier on, we have historically had a turnout of about 50 people, which is certainly not nothing, but it's a fraction of the people who have, who are impacted by these issues and who could be impacted by these issues. So it really is very important to get the message out to your community, to your clients, that calling, and letting people know, maybe even calling in the next couple of days and letting legislators know that, that their midwives who are going to be, on the Capitol campus in 2 days, and they're going to be coming to talk with them about the health benefits and the cost benefits of midwifery care, and that, they really hope that their members will be supportive and responsive. That could go a long way toward just making it, giving us a nice smooth entry when we come in on Lobby Day. So thanks, Val. That's important. Okay. So
Do you take the final slide and then we can end?
we do have a final slide. Let me go back to sharing my screen. There you go.
In conclusion, we want to encourage you to provide feedback to help make this webinar better for next year. Please direct feedback to either these emails. And thank you again for joining us today. We hope to see you in Olympia on Friday, or we hope you'll be sending emails and calling your representatives if you can't make it. And don't forget to check your email or the MODS website for the most up-to-date information about Lobby Day as it approaches. Everything you need should be available there already. And then we'll be updating this webinar there as well. So keep up the good work in the field, everyone. That's my baby coming out.
Sweet little Levi. All right. Thanks, everybody. And we hope to see some, if not all of you, on Friday.
Thanks, you guys. Good job.
Thanks.
Hi, Wyatt.
So thanks, Amelia, if you're able to end the recording. We are so grateful for you.